is it? What time is it? What time is it? Right now!
Welcome to Talking About Sports from the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill, the Carolina's #1 podcast for sports. We're here with our all-star panel as always, Reggie Walker, Mountaineer Mike Freer, and JT, our senior stats guy. JT been spanning the globe with Jim McKay way too often. Guys, breaking news, Roger Goodell, a 5-year, $200 million contract. That's over the objections of Jerry Jones, I would imagine. A quick point down the line, Reggie, 5 years, $200 million. That's my VCU math says that's about $40 million a year.
Well, but what that tells me is nothing's really changed. I mean, we just saw the report from a couple of years ago where he made $44 million for 1 year. So to me, this is really much ado about nothing. The owners are going to continue to keep a guy in position that's put a lot of money in their pockets over the years. Now, I would argue that he hasn't done anything from a money-making standpoint that was really that exceptional. This is a giant in terms of the NFL and football that was growing anyway, and the rights just went up, and he's in the right seat at the right time, as far as I'm concerned.
Mike, what do you think?
Well, put it this way. Look at all the crap that the NFL has been getting in the media. All the stuff, all the negativity, all the down attendance, all the down ratings, and he still gets $200 million for a 5-year deal. He's putting money in their pockets, like Reggie said, in a big way.
JT?
Mike, Reg, and Kev, you guys know that I'm a numbers guy for sure. So
You
just
are.
to
You are a
really,
senior statistician.
Thanks, man.
Where you been? Where you going to this weekend? You got a game?
I have Lakers, Hornets this Saturday.
Oh.
Yes, yeah. And then I have
Any
a
Lakers
South
girls
Carolina
gonna be
game.
there?
Hopefully so, man. I'll make sure that you asked about them for
All right,
sure.
well, I'm sure Will will be there if the Lakers are.
But back to Goodell. This is more
All right.
important stuff.
What's
But just to
up with
put
Goodell?
it in perspective, since from 2006 to 2015, now he just signed this contract 5 years for $200 million. But guys, from 2006 to 2015, you know that he pocketed $212 million. So that means from 2006 up until 2023, he is going to pocket almost $500 million. And Reg, you said it best. Like, the NFL has been making money, and one thing that shines a light on all of this, illuminates on all of this, is this: he has had battles with Bob Kraft. He's had battles with Jerry Jones recently. He's the one that's pretty much stood on top. And I think that kind of speaks volumes.
He's got 4 TV deals that exceed $1 billion apiece.
There you go.
I think $500 million for him over a span of that many years. The owners aren't worried about it because they've made even more.
There you go.
I would just say there's several lawsuits in the works, retired players, concussion settlements. I don't think this is a good look for the league. Basically, he is keeping the ship in the channel, maybe keeping the ball out of the gutter and heading towards the pins. Quickly, Greg Olsen, without limitations, Reggie, I think that opens up the offense to be more dynamic.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, it's unfortunate that he was unable to finish his first game back. And, a lot of times that's the case with an injury like that. You're talking about a foot injury that you just never know how it's going to respond after a full week of practice and then trying to play a game. And I think the thing that people forget is on a regular basis, we walk around with shoes on, right? We walk around with soft bottom shoes. To put on a football cleat for 2+ hours a day during the week and then try to go play a football game coming off of a foot that was broken, it's a lot more strain on the foot than I think people realize. So I think that's something that we as regular people, right, sometimes lose sight of. So, it's unfortunate that he was unable to finish that game, but looks like he's on track to go now, and we'll see how he plays.
I'll tell you what, they need some help on offense. They need Greg Olsen. Anything would help them. 12 games this year. They've been under 300 yards of total offense in 7 of them. I mean, they need something. They obviously miss Greg Olsen. He can only help them, and they're going to need it down the stretch.
JT?
Well, he's going to get his dog back, as Cam Newton, likes to say. But the one thing about it, though, is that the silver lining is that it has caused more players to really step up, so you can see them in a better light. Devin Funchess, I think that he has played well, and
that was more Kelvin Benjamin not being here, Funchess, but I think Ed Dixon stepping up as a direct result of Olsen not being in the lineup.
Ed Dixon as well, and let's not forget about Christian McCaffrey, guys. Since week 6, there have only been 4 other players that have averaged a higher yards per touch 4 running backs, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, Todd Gurley, and Derrick Henry. He's number 5 since week 6.
2 of them play for the Saints.
He averages 5.3 touches. That is correct. So that just lets you know that he is capable of really putting up some big numbers.
Yeah, I think the most important aspect of this, though, is going to have to be, and we saw it right in the first couple of games, especially the first game after the Kelvin Benjamin trade, the diversity of offense in terms of play calling by offensive coordinator Mike Shula was there. And I feel like in the last couple of games we haven't seen that as much. They've got to make sure to stay consistent with diversifying the play calling in the offense.
All right, one thing I can say before we go to a break is they better work on the offensive line, because last year in the game with Minnesota, Everson Griffin had 3 sacks on Cam Newton. These guys better learn how to block, or else it's going to be a long day for Cam Newton. We're just getting started. We've got more Panther talk plus college football coming up right here on Talking About Sports from the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. We here at Talking About Sports want to send a special acknowledgement to all the people, the first responders, and all the citizenry that's been affected by the wildfires out in California and the West Coast. So we definitely are thinking about you, and we wish you best from all the gang here at Talking About Sports. Welcome back to Talking About Sports from the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. John Tobias, Mountaineer Mike Freer, and Reggie Walker. Carolina and Minnesota. Minnesota currently, JT, the number 1 seed in the NFC.
Yes.
So as it stands now, if you want to go to the Super Bowl, you got to go through Minnesota. Minnesota with Case Keenum of all people. Maybe a lot of people, an afterthought, $2 million a year. I saw him play at the University of Houston. If it weren't for knee injuries, he would have been a first-round draft pick. He's a very good quarterback, maybe getting his due, maybe finally getting the opportunity to show what he can do, because Teddy Bridgewater's on the bench. And, what's his name? The other guy who used to be with the Rams.
Sam Bradford.
Sam Bradford is on IR. So I like Minnesota, but they got a good pass rush. Their defense is hitting. They got 2 receivers that are unheralded. They're getting a lot of play thanks to Case Keenum.
They're very balanced all around on offense and defense, just like you said. And, to really put in perspective, like, they're without their starting quarterback who started the season. And let's not forget about Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook was doing really well.
Out for the year.
Yeah, he was doing really, really well. So despite, 2 of their biggest assets on offense, guys, they're still doing
They had McKinnon
well.
as one of their running backs?
Yes, he has replaced Dalvin Cook.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, it's a huge game for the Panthers and a push to get to playoffs, because the division looks a little out of reach now when you're a game behind New Orleans and you lose a tiebreaker because you got swept. I mean, if they can pull this one off, they can get a win at home. I mean, you got to figure they're going to end up with at least 10 wins with Green Bay and Tampa Bay coming up, and they got to go to Atlanta at the end of the year. But the idea of this game would really, really put them in a good, solid position for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I mean, the reality is you have to look at, what it's about, right? And the game of football is about finding a way to win games. It doesn't matter who's doing it. It's about how you win games. And when you look at what Case Keenum has done this year, he's got a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. That's all you can ask from your quarterback. Don't turn the football over. Make the right football play. Take what the defense gives you. And at the end of the day, one thing Case Keenum understands with all of his experience in college, mind you, this is a guy that's really on his 5th or 6th year in the league, but again, that extra time in college with the injuries you talked about, he's been around the game a long time, and he understands all good drives end in a kick. And a lot of people miss that concept. It's okay to punt the football. Of course, it's better to kick a field goal or kick an extra point after a touchdown. But it's okay to punt the football because it allows your defense to come out, set itself, and play well, like Kev, you just mentioned.
Now, it's okay for them to punt the ball when you have Minnesota's defense to set it up, whatever.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. But
I agree with you.
But that's how you win football games, is you don't make mistakes and you capitalize on other teams' mistakes.
Keenum was a guy that at the University of Houston threw for about 5,000 yards in 4 different seasons, roughly. I'm paraphrasing. But he's a guy that did not. He was a 4-year starter. It took him several years due to injuries, but he started 4 years, and he threw for a lot of yards. They had a wide-open offense. This guy does nothing but throw the football. He's very accurate. JT, his percentage is very high.
67.5% completions this year, Kev.
There you go. But it's always been high. And he of the philosophy, live to fight another day. I'll kick. I'll take a sack. I'm not going to throw it away. I'm not going to give up the interception. I'll take the sack. but you're not going to get the ball. He trusts his defense. It's a good defense. So I really like what Minnesota's doing so far.
Right. I like that word, the operative word, percentages/ratings, because
That's that guy you're supposed to like.
To keep it on the subject of quarterback, Cam Newton, let's not get it twisted. With the Panthers, it still starts and ends with Cam Newton. And I'm just going to give you like a really great stat that I found pretty fascinating. When it comes to quarterback ratings, of course, you guys know just as well as I do, if you have 100 or more, that is excellent. That's Tom Brady, that's Aaron Rodgers. If you have 90, that is good. 80, not so much. 70 is bad. And 60, that's your Jamarcus Russell, Achilles Smith, not to throw any shade on them.
Why are you giving Jamarcus Russell that much credit?
Tim Couch. But here's the thing. When Cam Newton has a quarterback rating, guys, this year that's over 55, the Panthers are 8-1. So in other words, it still starts and stops at the end of the day.
I'm going to tell you this with Cam Newton. If Cam Newton has 0 turnovers, 0 interceptions, 0 fumbles, and if they can force a turnover, give a special team type of a break, and maybe time of possession, more first down total plays, Carolina will win this game. It's easier said than done. We've got college football to talk about right here on Talking About Sports on the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill.
We're talking about sports on
We're talking about sports at ADS. I don't know how to say that.
We're talking about
sports in, oh God, I forgot.
ADSN.
What is it?
ADSN.
ADSN, okay.
Yeah.
We're talking about sports.
Talking about sports.
We're talking about sports.
Talking sports. Talking about sports. We're talking about sports on ADSN.
Talking about sports on ADSN.
Welcome back to Talking About Sports from the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. Looks like Mike Freer, Mountaineer Mike, has been subbed out. We've got Charles Arbuckle in, national radio and television sports analyst, former UCLA Bruin and Indianapolis Colts. Buck,
Bring in the lefty.
Buck, we got to talk about some college football in the coaching carousel.
Okay.
A lot of teams are some comings and going. Arkansas, William Wilson, who's our floor director, right off camera, assistant executive producer Kevin Tolber here today. Arkansas has Chad Morris. I guess somebody's got to coach them. Florida, Dan Mullen. Florida State, Willie Taggart, allegedly misleading some people, but I don't know about that. Texas A&M's Jimbo Fisher gets a lot of money. Tennessee, Jeremy Pruitt. I think there's a lot going on there. Mississippi State, Joe Moorhead. I think Reggie knows something about that. Herm Edwards of Arizona State, you play to win the game. Ole Miss, Matt Luke, UCLA, Chip Kelly. Buck, before we get any further, what about guys who have an interim coach or a former coach, an incoming coach? How does that work?
Well, I think the big thing is if you look at this coaching list that we have here, 7 of the 9 coaches are offensive in nature. Herm is a defensive guy. Jeremy Pruitt is a defensive guy. The rest of them are offensive-minded guys. So you ask about the interim label. Sometimes an interim tag can get you a full-time job. If you
Luke?
Yeah, you look at Matt Luke. And I think also with Matt Luke, no one else is going to touch that program right now with all the things that are going on down there. And he's in the thick of it, and it's an opportunity for him to coach and maybe resurrect the program, especially with, it sounds like Shea Patterson may be leaving and some
Dating
other guys
apps are hot down there, I hear. They need to get a hold of Christian Mingle.
Easy.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I think
that's all I'm saying, man.
I don't know. I think the tough part, and I look at this, and I'm one of those guys, right, that I'm a college football guy that, listen, man, I watch every bowl game that there is on. I'm watching West Coast teams at midnight. I'm that guy.
I am
and
too.
The thing that frustrates me every year about the coaching carousel in late November, early December is you end up with a lot of bowl games with interim coaches or coaches on the way out and the coaches on the way in, and I just feel like sometimes we don't see the maximum optimum performance level from some of these teams because there's so much of an influx going on with their coaching situations. And then you add to it, and I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad thing or kids shouldn't do this, then you add to it in particular this year, a kid like Derwin James not playing the bowl game at Florida State because they're 6-6. It's not a high-level bowl game that they would generally be in. And so you add those things up and you wonder, how much it's diminishing the product of what we call the bowl games and diminishing the product of what we want to see to cap off our college football season.
Reggie, what do you know about your all-time great Penn State Nittany Lion? What about Joe Moorhead at Mississippi State?
I like the hire. I think let me say two things. First of all, to the Penn State fan base, let me say this right now, because a lot of people seem to be upset that he left. If you were paying attention, he left the head coaching job to take that offensive coordinator job. And Buck, as you well know, he did that because he needed to get on the radar of big schools to get an opportunity to be a head coach at this level. Yeah. So it has worked. And that's also the cost of success with your coordinators at any school.
Yeah.
The only thing I will say is the SEC in particular is a little bit of a different world. And I have all the confidence in the world in Joe Moorhead in terms of X's and O's. But the other stuff that comes with that, I think he's going to realize, and as much as I love Penn State, it's a different level of dealing with boosters and the like in the SEC as compared to a place like Penn State.
Yeah, I think the thing for him, though, being a head coach and then going to Penn State with all the things that they had going on, it gave him a chance. Because usually if you're a good head coach, you hire former head coaches to be around you to kind of help you and give you some advice and then also share their wisdom so they don't come and try to stab you in the back and take your job. But hopefully you launch them again. So he's in a good position. And I think at Mississippi State, they're never going to get the top-tier guys. Never.
No, you're going to have to coach them up.
But you're going to have to develop them and coach them up. And he's got a real good offensive mind. I will say this. We're getting on the players about sitting out. But guys can leave as a coach, and there's no problem.
Oh, I'm not blaming the players.
No. So I'm saying that's where the disconnect is.
Players aren't getting paid either.
Well, and I don't know if they should get paid outright, but I've always said this. Make sure if you graduate, you give them the opportunity to go back and get a degree, the secondary degree, because that's so much more important than just an undergrad in history or anything else. So I think that should be the thing you do as a standard. Think about the guys that got hurt. Jalen Smith was not going to get a dime from Notre Dame.
No.
Unless they paid his insurance, which they may have, or Jake Butt at Michigan. So to me, we always talk about the player and say, well, why aren't they playing? Derwin James is doing what Derwin James can do.
Right.
Christian McCaffrey did it because he could do it. Leonard Fournette was hurt last year, so let's not get that twisted.
Meanwhile, they run Kevin Sumlin off and give him $10 million.
Jim
I'd
Moore,
like to get
$12
that
million.
parting gift, JT.
Tell me about it. But well,
I'm in the wrong business, guys. Listen, I'm leaving. I'm going to coach.
He didn't take a pay cut when he left Penn State.
Yeah, Reggie does bring up a good point, though, in terms of like the coaching carousel. And it's funny because one of the guys on the list, Willie Taggart, is that he is the only
controversy with him misinforming, allegedly, Oregon and Florida State.
Well,
I think Willie Taggart's a great coach.
Yeah,
I think he's going to do well.
I can't speak on that only because I don't know. But what's fascinating is that when he got hired by Florida State, he's the only coach that has been the head coach at 3 different programs in a 365-day year span.
Wow.
Yeah, South Florida, Oregon, and now Florida State.
Yeah.
So that really does speak volumes. I'll tell you one thing, though, to put a bow on the coaching carousel is that one person that is really like benefiting out of this is Jimmy Sexton.
Oh, man.
10 out of 14, baby.
See the
if
SEC takeover.
Jeremy Pruitt gets hired, 11.
Hey, let me say this. I also have to get, I always try to stay down the line. I'm a UCLA grad, but I think what UCLA finally did was ingenious to go after the guy they wanted when Florida wasn't sure. Chip is a West Coast guy in way of where he's been.
Yeah.
He's a New Englander by trade, great offensive mind. He's coached on the East Coast. But for UCLA to go and do that and then pay Jim Moore $12 million, we have never done anything like that at the university. I say that was a huge hire for them to get out of the carousel of everything else.
Yeah. All right, now, the college playoff system now, and when everything got announced, I couldn't wait to be here on Talking About Sports because I wanted to ask Reggie Walker something. It seems like conference champions, you win your league, you're in the playoff, right? Now, Reggie, do you ever have a problem with winning your league and having a team didn't win their league and getting into the Final Four? Has that ever been done, Reggie, to your knowledge?
It's been done. And here's what I'll say, and I'll say it like this. Last year, because I know what you're referring to,
I'm not referring to anything, am I?
I didn't think Penn State was one of the best 4 teams last year, even though they had beaten Ohio State in the regular season. I think this year, I do think Alabama is one of the best 4 teams. My point that I've continued to make is the issue is there's no consistency, and I'm not saying that they should lay out something, but the problem is we live in a society, right, where everybody has conspiracy theories. So when you're very opaque about your process, I'm just going to give you 15 pieces of criteria that we use, but we're not going to tell you how we use what we use. We're just going to tell you that we use it in some kind of way, shape, or form. And then when you get a guy like Kirby Hocutt on the ESPN show talking about the playoffs, and he has 4 different explanations for the 4 teams that are in, that is going to bother people. And so to me, the biggest issue is not what they're coming up with, because their job is to get the best 4 teams.
Yeah.
The mistake they're making is by putting a poll out every week, because I'll say it like this, and I'm going to say this succinctly. I don't care if Ohio State would have beat Wisconsin 63-0. If you got Ohio State at number 8 and Alabama at number 4 or number 5, what were they going to do in 1 week that says they're better than Alabama all of a sudden? In my eyes, there's no change. If I rank you at number 2 and somebody else at number 3, if I got Buck at 2 and JT at number 3, I don't care who you beat the next week. What does that mean? You haven't beat Buck.
And let me tell you one thing about this, too. When it first came out, I said this about this whole thing. I love that we have a playoff system, but you've got coaches in that room and you've got other people in that room that have an agenda. Whatever their agenda, you don't know. They have to recuse themselves. So in some instances, you may have 10 people voting on this at a certain time, especially when you have the guys that are on this committee. That's the one thing. How much are they going to weigh certain things?
Right.
So 1 week they say one thing, the next week they say another, and that's what I don't like about it. The other thing is, it's time for all conferences to play either 8 or 9 games. They need to agree on that.
Now, JT, do we need 8 teams like the Big 5 conference champions and 3 wild cards?
I don't think you do if you solidify the criteria.
No, I don't think so at all. No, not at all.
Let's say
because the thing about it is
Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, SEC. That's 6. Is that? I don't know. I'm not good at math.
I say 6 or 8.
That's 6. But
let's say,
and then you add a couple wild cards and you get 8 teams total.
Yeah, but let's say if one of the conference champions, let's say if they're not that good. You know, I mean, it happened more or less like to the Big 12 in terms
by the way,
in
and
terms
you
of last
incorporate
year.
the bowls. So the Outback Bowl, the Belk Bowl, the Humanitarian Bowl, or whatever the
Before you go to that, before you guys go to that, can I say one thing?
Yeah, go for it.
The conference champions stuff is a farce if you're going to have a few of them that have 8 and a few that play 9.
Yeah, and then you have a rematch in the Big 12.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
so here's my thought on that. If the SEC had been left out any one of these years,
it would have went to 8.
We would have went to 6 or 8.
Yeah.
They would have been an outcry for that. And let's not get it twisted.
But it means a lot in terms of being a conference champion, but it doesn't mean everything. And here's the reason why I say that. In terms of ever since we've had the playoffs, 14 out of the 16 conference champions have made it. They have made it. 14 out of the 16, they have made it. So it means a lot, but it does not mean everything. Ohio State just happens to be one of the ones that did not make it.
I'm saying the way it is, the right teams, the way their criteria is set up from week to week, they picked the right 4 teams for what they were looking for. It may not be what you actually wanted.
And I think there's a way, to you guys' point, there's a way to do 8, and I think you can do, as awkward as this is going to sound, you can do 8 teams with the 5 conference champions and 3 wild cards, and you basically say the first round, right? You can do 2 weeks after the regular season ends. You can do that at home sites, and you basically say if you're a conference champion, you have an opportunity to host. Now you got 5 conference champions, so one of them's going to have to go on the road. What they don't want in this particular scenario is if Alabama doesn't win the SEC, but they get a wild card, they don't want Alabama on the road at a Penn State or at a Texas or at a Arizona or Oregon, because there's a chance that team could lose.
Indeed. Now, good points, guys. But a couple of teams of local note. Outback Bowl. You can't have an Outback Bowl without South Carolina. It seems like they're in it every year. The Sun Bowl, NC State and Arizona State. Herm Edwards, you play to win the game.
Or the Food Bowl at Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. I'm in with that.
Neighborhood Grill Food Bowl. Wings.
Thank you.
We got a pretzel with
you just put it all in front of me. Ain't nobody else eating.
The Sun Bowl, Arizona State, and NC State. The Quick Lane Bowl of all things, Duke and Northern Illinois. And how about the game? I'm really looking forward to this game, not only because I'm working it. The Belk Bowl. Frank Kay and those guys do a great job. Wake Forest coming to Bank of America Stadium with Giga Maggies, the Texas A&M Aggies. I really like that. So we've got more talking about sports coming right back with food in the house from the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill.
Yes.
You're the best.
Thank you.
I'm going to get my salad over there. I'm going to get my little salad.
Welcome back to the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. And I want to thank Kevin Tolbert behind the scenes, our executive producer, and our floor director today, the dapper, as always, William Wilson, for providing us with information that we had forgotten that we need to remember. And by the way, speaking of Will, at the Bronco Nagurski Awards with Charles Arbuckle for the defensive overall player, Bradley Chubb. Guys look good. You look good in your William Wilson custom suit there, Buck. And I think, was it $275? You get a suit off the rack?
Ooh.
It'll make you need one, JT.
I do.
You're talking about it.
I told him.
And it'll be fitted for you.
I'm trying to make it happen.
I'm looking for that down the line, by the way.
Yes.
I'm more widely regarded than I need to be right now. But college, and that seems to be that's been the case for a while, but I'm working on it. College basketball, JT, Duke. They're pretty good. They're number one. They have the greatest coach, number one in terms of all-time wins. Mm-hmm. Their lineup is really. I like this Bagley guy. Isn't he amazing?
I saw him in person. I did the St. Francis.
You're always somewhere.
I try to be, man. I did a St. Francis Duke game on Tuesday.
St. Francis?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah,
how did St. Francis do?
Come on, Duke.
Hear me out.
Play somebody.
Hear me out.
They do play people.
Yeah. I don't know if I can curse, but this dude is a grown-ass man in terms of Bagley. He is a
don't use that in the context of St. Francis.
True. He is a beast. I mean, just to put it in perspective, and let's take St. Francis out of the equation. Like in terms of Marvin Bagley,
they played
his
Texas already.
Yes, and
he
Michigan
State,
and he balled out,
them.
and he balled out.
Right.
Except for Michigan State, he already has 7 20-point games. 7. And the thing about it is that people always talk about Cal. People always talk about Cal in terms of like how he brings in like freshman players. Coach K, he's like done it like consistently.
He's evolving. He's adapting.
He is evolving. And they have this other guy, Wendell Carter, out of Atlanta. That was at one point where those two guys alone had more points than the entire St. Francis team. But still, to put it in perspective, he has some players on that team.
To your point about Coach K, what I like about him is not only does he have that influx of the one-and-done type of players, especially recently, but he keeps enough veteran players around to really help lead that basketball team. If you really think about Kentucky, when Coach Cal had it at their best when they were playing in Final Fours, remember the championship year, they had Darius Miller and DeAndre Liggins, a couple of older players to help bring those guys along. When you look at Duke right now, regardless of what his behavior has been over the last couple of years, you've got an older veteran in Grayson Allen to help pull these young guys along. So, yes, let the young guys and let their talent just go, but then you rely on Grayson Allen to take big shots and make certain plays in big moments because of his experience. To me, that's the ingenious of Coach K.
Buck, what do you think of the North Carolina Tar Heels? I think, aren't they the defending national champs?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Buck, what do you think of the 9-1 North Carolina Tar Heels? Are they where you think they are?
Well, I've been pleasantly surprised with them. I think you look at what we talk about with Coach K, both of these coaches and Roy Williams as well, they've had to adjust to the one-and-done rule, the other things that have come along. But you've got to keep your veterans engaged. And I think that's the one thing they've done a really good job of with both of these teams is keeping those guys, knowing that you got a highly talented kid that's coming into your program, but he still has to learn the way you play at Duke or North Carolina. And I think North Carolina, that's what's been impressive to me earlier in the season.
JT, does North Carolina have that guy that punched the wall from playing PlayStation or Xbox or whatever
Joe
it was?
Berry,
who is
second, and he balled out against Davidson.
He's already playing, even with his broken hands.
He's already
playing.
playing. Now they stunk when they lost to Michigan State last week.
Yeah, this
they
cast
got
a lot shorter than Kevin Tolbert did.
Right, but it kind of alludes to what Reg said in terms of having senior pedigree. Like he's a senior as well as Theo Pinson. They just need to have more young guns like Bagley and Carter like Duke has. But they're definitely on the road to doing well. They're 9-1, right?
Well, I think that'll change over the next couple of years for Roy because now they're through this NCAA situation because he had to have a different recruiting philosophy dealing with that because he trying to get those type of players to come there not knowing what potential penalties could be was a factor in what he did.
One thing I want to point out, David Robinson, the Admiral, all-time San Antonio Spur great, I might add, said that Bagley reminds him of Tim Duncan. He says he's going to be the next Tim Duncan. So that's pretty high praise.
Hey, one thing too. What about Luke May? Walk on. Now he's been a star.
Huntersville, right, JC?
Yeah, I mean that's
a walk on.
High school.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shout out to his younger brother Drake, I believe his name is. He's going to be a really good high school quarterback.
Yeah.
Young.
Is it that Drake?
Yeah, he's young though. No, not the singer.
Started from the bottom.
Yeah, he goes
now
to
we're
Hart.
here.
By the way, we want to mention South Carolina State's Ty Solomon collapsed against NC State. Two things. First of all, we wish the Solomon family the best, and I hope that Ty gets back. He's at UNC Rex Healthcare's North Carolina Heart and Vascular Hospital. We want him to get back to good health and hopefully can resume his academic studies at South Carolina State. But also NC State, how do you react to you see a guy go down like that? I remember I go back far to see, and Buck, you probably know. Remember, what was it, Pepperdine or who was it with Paul Westhead and Hank Gathers?
I mean, Loyola Marymount.
That's got to leave a lasting impression.
Well, see, and that's around my era. I knew Bo Kimball, I knew Hank. We were all in school around the same time, so I would see those guys at parties at UCLA, and a couple of them, I can't remember exactly how it happened, but they were
Bo Kimball.
Bo Kimball, and man, to see that happen, to see a guy like Hank, because you would see him. Cool, brother.
This guy's invincible, man. He's a
exactly.
Big dude, man.
Reggie
Strong.
Lewis from the Celtics. It's just when you see those kind of things, man, it affects you.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know what I would do. I never saw that in my athletic playing career, but that's got to have an emotional impact on you. It's kind of like what the guys on Monday Night Football saw.
Well, when you see Bo Kimball still to this day affects him when he talks about it. And the whole thing while he was going with his left hand, which Hank was a left-handed shooter through that stretch run, you can still see him get emotional about it.
Absolutely.
So we saw some emotion on the Monday night game with Pittsburgh and the Bengals. The linebacker
Ryan
Shazier is still under medical care. I think he's in Pittsburgh right now. So we wish him all the best. We've got one more segment to go. We're coming right back with more Talking About Sports from the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. Welcome back to Talking About Sports from the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. Before we go, I want to thank Mountaineer Mike Freer for being a part of the panel here today. Our floor director, the dapperly dressed, as always, William Wilson, where suits are on sale for $275 right off the rack.
Just for me.
And hopefully me one day, and Kevin Tolbert. We're both a little widely regarded, and our executive producer, Kevin Tolbert. State high school football playoffs 4AA, Mallard Creek in the state 4AA game, and Harding's 4A, and a guy from around here that, Reggie, you know about Kavarius Crouch. What's going on with him?
Yeah, Kavarius Crouch, he's a junior right now, high-level running back. We're going to see him play really well on Saturdays. And before that, don't let me forget, Mallard Creek, loaded football team. Keep an eye on defensive lineman Jordan Davis. A lot of offers, a lot of opportunities to go play somewhere big.
I will say this. I saw the game last week, Hardin and Vance. Crouch is a grown man.
Uh-oh. And how about Charlotte Catholic's Milan Howard leading them against Havelock? That game will be at Dukes Wallace Wade Stadium. JT, Charlotte Catholic's Milan Howard reaping some postseason awards.
He's been getting a lot of press, and the thing about it is that I haven't had a pleasure to see him play in person, but he just got announced to where he was the Southern Carolina's Offensive Player of the Year. He was just announced this week. Like I said, I haven't had the pleasure to see him, but I know that Buck has.
Yeah, so guys, when I got a chance to watch him play, the first thing I was most impressed with was his ability to block. He's a great receiver, great guy to the backfield, catching the ball, running the football. With his blocking and leading to help those teams, that team that's all they do a lot of running, but he has been able to show some real good skills. And thank you for joining Talking About Sports this week. I want you guys to check out this expose on Milan Howard, Gifted Hands. Coach Brodowitz, there's been a lot of talk about your young running back, Milan Howard. He's humble, shy, but on the field, he's a beast. Tell us who Milan Howard is.
Well, Milan is first and foremost, he's a team player, and he buys into everything that we teach here at Charlotte Catholic about, being a total, complete football player.
He's a special back. He can catch it out the backfield. He's a good blocker, and of course, he's an explosive runner. He does a lot of things well between the tackles. And then, of course, once he gets in the open field, he's a finisher.
So, Coach Kennedy, looking at this young man and knowing his story in the recruiting process, how is that going so far?
Well, I definitely think it's picked up here in the latter part of the season. You know, the funny thing about the recruiting process for Milan has been the fact that I think he's the most under-recruited player, or one of the most under-recruited players in the state of North Carolina.
He's got 6 offers coming in right now. I mean, he should have a lot more. He runs consistently 4.4 over the summer camps. They're just kind of going, well, you know, I wish we known about him a year ago. What happens is this recruiting process, everyone's got their scholarships locked up by their junior year. So a guy like Milan comes, and we have that here that has developed his senior year. 10 years ago, Milan would be a highly recruited athlete across the board.
A lot of times, sometimes he's out of the game by the end of the third quarter because he's already racked up 200 yards, 150 yards, 3 touchdowns. You know, you don't at that point you don't want to keep him in to get banged up. You know, teams are overlooking him.
All right, here we go. Start at 15.
There's no eye on team, but my eyes on winning. I'ma drive the lane until the timer says finish. I won't tone it down, not even for a minute. I'm working like a champion until they say he did it.
I've been trying to work harder, improve myself and the other kids that have offers, and trying to show that this year. You know, I kind of don't take what I have for granted, so, and I've worked for what I've had so far. And
he's a humble kid, and for a kid to be that good, you know, sometimes I think people overlook his ability because he's a nice kid.
Well, he's just a fun kid. He has a fun atmosphere. He always has a smile on his face.
Yeah!
That whole package together makes him a very effective leader.
Hard wins in practice.
I love the game, love the sport, the atmosphere, the players, the coaches, going against another opponent.
Both your coaches mentioned blocking as a key part of your game. Most of the times you don't hear that from a running back. How do you get that done on the football field?
Everybody has a job to do. In the league, there's a thing called a third down back who would go in and like block, and some people are first and second down backs. So I want to be a type of guy who can do it all.
We've done things from climbing mountains, to me waking him up at 4 a.m., taking him to run hills, to doing stairs. We jog uptown together. It's a multitude of things that we do for his training regimen. I also ran track from 6th grade up into 12th grade as well, and I was pretty fast. No, I was really fast. I was the last leg on the 4x100 relay, and I could say that's what Milan gets his speed from me.
The ability was there, all the tools were there. I think the biggest thing was his confidence and given a chance. He was given a chance to show what he can do, and he took it by the horns and just kept running with it. So that is his biggest attribute through my training.
Conditioning is one of the most important factors because it'll keep you on the field longer. Like, you'll be able to play and run and go at 100% if other people are tired. My running back coach, Coach Leon, you know, it helps me learn more and be more productive on the field, blocking and running routes and get my feet set.
What I wanted and needed to add to his game was an intellectual understanding of the game of football before the snap of the football. And Milan is starting to really understand how to utilize the entire field. And you see a lot of that in his touchdowns.
So this name, Gifted Hands, huh? So you catch everything, drop nothing. How did that come about? How did you get that name?
I played ball in Florida in my 8th grade year, and so and I played wide receiver, and so it was the championship game, and I was catching a lot of pad passes that were thrown at me.
And my cousin, she was like, he catches the ball phenomenally, like he's gifted, his hands are gifted.
And so my mom kind of stuck with it, and that's how I got the name.
You're on the football field. Is your mom the quiet one, or is she the one you know is yelling from the 50-yard line?
She's just kind of parents to like scream and you better find that end zone.
Say that again. You better find that end zone. Let's go! Woo!
Okay, so at the games, I'm not usually the quiet mom.
Hey, that's a long ball! That's a long ball! Let's go, Cougars! Let's go! Let's go, Cougars! Let's go! Woo!
he's actually running. I'm paying attention, I'm recording, trying to make sure that, he's taking the right cut.
And I get a lot of tape from his mom. She sent me a lot of plays because we use those plays, whether it's highlights of touchdowns or tackles for a loss or solo tackles or bad reads.
You better find that end zone. If he's messing up, I'm going to look at him, I'm going to correct him in the middle of the game. Hey, you can't get through, just turn into a samurai, find the end zone.
The signature moment with Milan Howard for me has been the actual Marvin Ridge game. I saw Milan come out and take that game over single-handedly.
One that just happened was probably against the Cuthbertson game, and the safety came over and he just put his head down and ran over him, and that's when I went, wow, this kid's special here.
So Milan, I know your mom plays a big role in your life. How has she helped you in this process of not only getting better on the football field, but recruiting and in the classroom?
She wants the best for me at all times, and she's kind of strict about it, But I can see what she's doing, trying to keep me on the right path and doing the right thing.
I just feel as though if I've set a foundation now, that he's not going to, try to breeze by and do things the easy route. And hands down, without a doubt, the people that we've been blessed to be surrounded with, I wouldn't trade them.
We work to get to get the scholarship, but we don't quit until our name's on the ceiling. So that's what we're working for.
His mom has done a great job with him. He has matured where I think he sees the big picture, and and we'll keep tabs on. But he has a bright future wherever he ends up going.
Some advice she gives me is tell the truth, be faithful, stick to God, and be grateful for what He gives me.